and linking with the network and pool of people that will help us help them better. So when Muslim communities are more sophisticated and active, you see they have a lot more linkages to secular and other faith organizations, so they realize their limitations, and they realize the type of support they can give her is a support of, you have someone in your community who's not going to turn away from you, but you need to get help now, and we can't provide you shelter. But if you go to this shelter, we won't leave you. We will be here. We will visit you, we'll get together once a week. We'll make sure your kids get to Sunday school, whatever the case may be. So the advocacy shifts a little bit. And another thing that happens in informal ways with Muslim communities is that the abuser is in play all the time. So you got to keep an eye on him, because he's navigating in the community as well. And so you have to find the ways and means to inform, and some communities do it better than others, to inform that imam, this is the situation that we have with this guy, and we need you to be our eyes and ears. Some imams, it depends on their education and understanding of domestic violence, but I can tell you, in my community of Northern Virginia, we have a Muslim social worker, and the imam, they get together and they talk about cases that are happening in the community, so that he's aware of who out there needs to be kept an eye on and what's happening as the services are being navigated within the community. If she chooses to stay within the community to navigate her services or get linked to secular and other faith resources, having that network of community leaders and imams who have the ability and the authority recognized within the community to be an extension of that safety net. It's not perfect, but it's definitely come a long way, and it's something that communities are becoming more aware of, and they're thinking of better ways of saying, how can we address this in a real way? How can we get better at addressing this? Because it used to be, a thing here or there, and now that our awareness has been built, their awareness has been built as to how big of a problem it is. So they're trying to figure out good ways of addressing this. And so it looks different. The advocacy may look differently. The sensitivities may be different. Sometimes our challenge is in getting a woman to feel safe enough to go to a shelter. So it's kind of that whole linkage of, when she gets there, let's make sure we're sensitive enough to keep her there, but then we have to work on our end to make sure she's safe enough to feel that she can go in the first place. And that only happens through collaboration. And successful communities have successfully collaborated with their local shelters and services, such that you are sure, when you tell her it's going to be okay, you can say that and mean it. For that. So I'll leave with that, because this is just kind of a general, I think I'm off topic a little bit, actually. But I just wanted to share that with you all, and that, competency matters, collaboration matters, and it's not in these big, it doesn't have to be a big overarching gesture. It's the simple things that you do every day, that you follow through with every day, that matter. And hopefully, you don't have to be an expert in everything Muslim and Islam, but what you walk away with in terms of being competent is knowing when to ask a good follow-up question and knowing when to ask for help to help you. So that's really what competence is about, in my opinion, and not just, being the rattle off, whatever, this or that. So I'll leave you all with that. In terms of looking at how faith can be used. Listen to your client. Listen to your client. If they want to use faith as part of their survivorship, then find a way to help them use it. If they don't tell you, then leave it at that. And people sometimes, their fear is, and I can tell you for a fact, their fear is that they're going to be looked down upon for asking for having support through their faith, because it's generally looked down upon. It's not intellectual. It doesn't embrace certain feminist principles that they may feel they have to embrace. It doesn't embrace certain things. And so these are the fears and concerns that women have, not just Muslim but Christian, and anyone who has a deep sense of spiritual well-being, and that's a part of their survivorship. And that faith has gotten them through years of abuse. Who are you to tell them that is not sufficient anymore? So just listen to your client.
client-based services is the #1 way to just kind of work through a lot of these issues. Listen to your client, where they're at. Don't prescribe what you think they need to know. Listen to what they're trying to tell you. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Bonita. I'm actually going to talk about a case study to kind of illustrate specific ways in which our agency accessed services for a client and also collaborated with other agencies to provide her services. Our agency, which Lubaba mentioned, it's Opnagar in Chicago, and it's a little bit different because we have a longer-term relationship with the clients and a longer-term engagement with them. We typically work with them actually up to about 5 years, because that's what we've seen is sort of the good period in which, I mean, like a good length of time in which they can become citizens. So our goal is really to work with them to the citizenship phase. And so I know that they've talked a lot about the VAWA self-petitioning process, and that's typically the process for someone who's married to a U.S. citizen. So we actually have had people are working with people who've been with us for about 10 years because of different legal processes, but 5 years is kind of typical for us. So I'm going to talk to you about a client that came to us as a refugee from a country in Africa. She was married to someone from her country who was actually here as a refugee, so she came as a derivative. She lived in a refugee camp in another country for about 17 years, had survived multiple rapes, and in the time that she was married and able to come to the U.S., she was raped by one of the guards in the refugee camp and became pregnant as a result of that pregnancy, or I'm sorry, of the rape. So when she came to the U.S., her husband became abusive and rejected her because of that rape. So then she came to our shelter. Again, they talked about a lot of sort of limited English proficiency and accessing services for people with language that don't speak English but speak other languages. Fortunately for us, because we've been in our community for a long time and we've been accessing, that we actually were specifically created to work with people from immigrant and refugee communities, that we have lots of linkages with other community groups. So we were able to find her an interpreter pretty quickly, someone that we had worked with before and trusted, and that she was also able to build a rapport with. So we started that, obviously. We also helped her access public benefits because as a refugee she is eligible. And then we also have a really good relationship with a community college that's in our community, so we were able to get her ESL classes. She also showed some interest in wanting to learn how to use computers and things, and that community college also offers free computer classes. And then we were able to help her access mental health services with psychiatrists in the community because obviously she had severe PTSD that we had also, again, created some linkages with. And also there's community health centers that psychiatrists work out of. But then we also supplemented that with counseling at our agency at the shelter. We have individual counseling that we provide to clients around talk therapy, some psychotherapy, but we also have which we found has been very useful for immigrant clients, especially with language barriers, but also cultural issues around doing a lot of counseling and talking a lot about their problems. So we are using art therapy and movement therapy. So we have groups, and now we've actually started programs where we're doing individual art therapy as well. Our clients find it much easier to be able to express themselves through those mediums. So we were able to help her with that. We have legal advocacy at our agency, so we helped her find representation for the divorce case, and also to work towards citizenship because after a certain point of being a refugee, she is eligible for that. In all this time, of course, she didn't have a huge community in Chicago because the community obviously was her husband's community, but the disconnect from her community made her obviously feel really bad. So she also decided to keep the baby that was a result of the rape. And then we were able to actually help her find a church in which she could have, a church from her community in which she could have that baby baptized through the resources in the community organization that had also provided the interpreter. So now, this is about 4 years later, she's pretty fluent in English, probably more than me. And she's in a nursing program, she's in stable housing, she's soon to be a citizen, and has a community of friends now through our organization, through this church, and through other sources and other resources that she's found for herself through her schools and other places that she's been to. So it's really important for us to acknowledge that every client that comes to us has her own strengths, and we choose to see that moment when they come to the shelter or decide to access our agency as a moment of strength rather than a moment of weakness. It's important for us to recognize that that's a huge step that they've taken, and that we understand all that it took to come to us to seek those services, especially in a situation like this where she had very recently arrived to the U.S. And had only her husband's community that she could have turned to. So that's kind of really what I wanted to talk about in terms of the case study. I have another one, but I thought I'd open it up to questions if you had some specific questions about ways in which to collaborate and things like that.
I had one more example to give about how in Muslim communities, how advocacy and using faith and reaching out can be affected, and not to open up a can of worms, but one of the things that we have, one of the things that goes on in Muslim communities is that it surrounds marriage, and in terms of how it reflects on domestic violence, you have some abusers that are serial abusers who marry a woman and then refuse to religiously give her a divorce. Now, this can be a cause of great anxiety for the woman. She can get a divorce civilly, but if this is a woman who's steeped in her faith, she may not consider herself divorced until she is religiously divorced. So one of the ways that we've tried to address this in terms of Muslim communities is finding an imam, if that's the case, and I won't go into all the specifics of a male-initiated divorce versus a female-initiated divorce and the criteria for each, that we don't have time for that. But I will say what's been happening in Muslim communities is that we're finding networks of imams who we can call, who we can reach out to, who can grant her a divorce if her local imam does not give it to her. So that's one of the things. Another things in terms of dealing with her contract, and her is called maher. It's roughly translated to dowry, although that's not sufficient term for it, but it's the best analogy I can give you. And working with Muslim lawyers to help women who are trying to get their contracted gift from their husband. So those are other ways that we're collaborating, not just within Muslim communities, but reaching out to other legal-based services and educating them around what this means when they walk into a courtroom and say, well, he owes me $10,000 because it's in our contract. And how do we ensure and educate Muslim communities on how to make their contracts legally binding in a court of law? So those are some issues that we're working with in terms of that. So I just wanted to raise that in terms of a concrete example of, in terms of accessing legal services and educating across both aisles and addressing a tactic that is used by abusers, and that is refusing to give divorce proceedings to their wife as a means of control and psychological anxiety. That's it. You haven't? No. Oh, okay. So I know that was a bit brief, but when we were sitting here talking, we were like, you know, the former panel kind of talked about a lot of this, so we didn't want to regurgitate themes, just kind of go in a new direction. But if there's any pending questions that you guys have had, any more concrete examples that you want to talk about, or ask us questions, please do so. I know you guys have been saturated with a lot of information, so is there any burning question that you need to know or want to know? that I can answer. We can answer. Yes.
Once a woman asks for divorce in Muslim religion, or is there any ostracization of the man because he's been mean to his wife? Is there any kind of social issues around that? I guess that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. The question is, and when in the case of divorce, is there any social ostracization of the man if he's been cruel in the divorce proceedings? And the short answer is it depends. Depends on the culture of the people who are involved in that divorce or whatnot. In some cultures, divorcees, whether male or female, are looked down upon. Like, it's just, you don't get divorced. It is very, you know, it's a big deal. Will they ever get remarried again? You know, all of these things happen. In a larger Muslim community, you know, as with all divorces, people take sides. You know, some people think he was justified, some people think she was justified, he's the crazy one, she's the crazy one. So when it mets onto larger Muslim community, because a lot of these times in divorce proceedings, even if it's DV, there's a small circle of people who actually know if it was DV or not, just for confidentiality reasons. But the larger community just sees it as a divorce, and so they may take sides accordingly to whoever they know or whoever's friends with who or whatnot. But in terms of culturally speaking, if that person comes from a culture where divorce is frowned upon severely, there are social ramifications in terms of her remarriage or his ability to get remarried. And in some of those cases, the male may go, what happens if it's an abuser is that they go either to another community or they go back home and find another woman to marry them who doesn't know that history. So that's how that dynamic plays out. But it just depends on the community, on the situation. But there can be ostracization depending on the culture. Wow. I'm going to let them. Do you have any? Nope. Yes.
Have you helped any moms use like the Faith Trust Institute?
Yes.
Talk about that, how receptive they are.
We have been trying to crack a nut for years, and that is training imams. And they're, you know, having been working at it for a long time, some are easier than others. And what's trending, what's happening now is that Faith Trust Institute has hosted imam training successfully. Peaceful Families has recently held a successful imam training, and over the course of the years, I've had the pleasure of training imams and educating them. What it takes for imams, however, is repeated education, and finding the right way to be a strong ally for an imam. Because, you know, imams in the community, one, you have to put them in a space where they can be safe enough, if it makes sense, to be wrong. Which, if you have them in mixed trainings or mixed community, that you have to think about, there's just factors involved. So having imam-only trainings have turned out to be quite successful because it gives them a space to be wrong, to not have to know everything, and it also helps in that other imams who have a level of credibility with them can help in educating them. So now, over the course of the last 10 years of training and educating individually and all of that, you have a cadre of imams who are very good at proactively educating, and they will proactively educate and support other imams in their education. So it's still a long way to go. And the challenge is, it's not that imams are for domestic violence. You ask any average imam, they're not going to say, I am for domestic violence. The challenge becomes is how does their attitudes regarding family and other attitudes impact their intervention when a domestic violence case comes before them, or if they are aware enough of all the nuances of domestic violence, being a psychological and other things, to recognize it as domestic violence and then treat it accordingly. So there's still a level of education. I always joke with my fellow advocates that, you know, I'd rather have an ignorant imam than a imam that's kind of knows a little bit, because they're almost more dangerous, because then they don't think they need to learn anymore. So you have that scenario, and then you have the preaching to the choir imams, where they get it and they can be strong allies. It's taken a while for us as Muslim advocates, because there's so much anger in many times of being angry with them, because we've all heard the stories of just go back and pray and do this and that, and it's like very frustrating, of learning how to be good added value allies. And I think imams are meeting us halfway. So there's a shift that's happening in that we're really, truly, I think, becoming good allies to one another, and learning how to collaborate more effectively. And they being strong in collaborating with other imams and educating them, because there's only so much legitimacy I can have in a room full of imams. I'm not a scholar. You know, especially those who are more conservative, you really need another imam there to kind of say, to get pushed through that wall. And that is where it becomes helpful, because then you start to have a ripple effect where they can go further and educate better in a way because of who they are than I could in 5 years. And then there's the benefit of working locally with your local imam. We had a local imam in Columbus that we've been slowly through each case educating him more, because he started on a bit more of a conservative place, and now he's in a much better place. You can wear him down. You can wear them down. You can educate them. Because if you go from a place of just let's talk about these core principles, then they're going to be open to it. And I think their concerns is getting police involved. Their concerns are breaking up families. So when you deal with those fears that they have, like, they don't want to be the imam that breaks up families. That's not what they want to be known as. So it's a scary thing for them as well, not to excuse their excuses, but it's a real concern. And so how do we help them either get a thicker skin or understand enough to know how to do the right interventions and the best interventions, and that they have support. A lot of communities expect their imams to do a lot of work, and there's no support around them. So in some communities, who say, you don't have to figure it out, you consult us. Just bring us in. We'll be your panel we'll be your posse of justice. Just you know, make us a part of that decision process, that counseling process. And in some cases, it works very well. So it's happening slowly but surely. Anything?
I just wanted to say that we're actually having a similar experience in Chicago training judges. So it's exactly kind of parallels exactly what Bonita is saying. So.
And I think it's the same mentality that, you know, judges are not used to being in a place where they need to be corrected. So it's kind of tough. Anything? Everyone ready for early Friday? Is that what it is? I know I am. Anything that you wanted to ask in this conference that you have not yet asked, that you can at least ask? I don't know if I'll be able to answer it, but I'll... Anything? No? Okay. I didn't have anything else really, did you? All I wanted to do is just say, please take advantage of the resources shared today. Go to the website, peacefulfamilies.org, Faith Trust Institute. Feel free to contact me if you have a question. As you know, I'm more than willing to answer a question. Maybe not always very well, but I will try to answer it for you. So that's all I have, and it's been a pleasure. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with the group, because we go through these things sometimes and people are so not comfortable in asking. And so the fact that you guys are comfortable enough in asking says a lot about where, you know, your trajectory and where you are and what you're really trying to do and get done. So that's great. I appreciate it. Yes? Peaceful Families. It's peacefulfamilies.org. That's where you can get a lot of the information. And in your, I think your resource CD, there's a bibliography and a list of a lot of the resources and where you can get them on your resource CD. So I would do that as well. And if you have any trouble getting any of those items, just email, just contact Lubaba, she'll contact me, or we'll get you the information. So any roadblocks in getting any of those resources, just let me know. Is that it?
That was good. Short and sweet.
I just wanted to once again thank you all for attending our conference, and to especially thank the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute for giving us the grant so that we could have this. Again, if you guys could fill out your evaluations, our CEU certificates are outside. Everyone can get one. If you came either late today or late yesterday or didn't attend yesterday, your name will be written on your certificate. But if you're here for both days, just go ahead and grab a blank one, and you'll be good to go. Our website for the Muslim Alliance of Indiana is indianamuslims.org. My contact information is on there. You guys should have all gotten an email from me telling you guys if you didn't show up, you'd be billed $50. So that was me that sent that. Shard told me to, so it wasn't I was just told to send it, so I'm sorry. And with that, thank you again for attending, and you guys have been wonderful.
All right.
Thank you guys so much.
No problem.
He was here for like a few minutes.
I know. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Bonita, for remembering the tongue-talking people. Very underrepresented in the interfaith dialogue.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we had an actual issue like that.
You what?
We had an issue too where a client was doing that, and one of the shelter workers wanted to report her for mental health issues and wanted to say that, like, you know, we're not equipped to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So the other staff had to intervene and be like, we're the culturally competent ones. Come on.
Exactly.
Everybody comes to us
To be competent.
We can't be idiots about this.
That's funny. It happens. So I guess you guys are going to be breaking down the room soon, right?
Is the fashion show in here?
The fashion show is right next door, so they're already set up.
It's next door.
You guys can come to the fashion show?
Yeah.
You guys are leaving tomorrow, right?
Yeah, or early. Yes, or late tonight.
That's Saturday. You don't have to leave that early.
Yeah, I rented a car. I just have to return it by 8, so we are leaving early.
Okay. By 8 p.m.?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. It's usually
But
5 in the morning.
we gain an hour, so 5's not
That's
too
right,
bad.
you do gain an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Indiana doesn't change time zones, so right now we're East Coast, but then at the end of the month we go to a Central Zone, and then we flip-flop.
Except that,
Really? Why do you?
Horrible. I don't know, I just moved here 3 weeks ago. I just found this out.
Well, I was wondering why. I was like, why is my phone
Why is
still?
my phone not East Coast time?
No, it is East Coast time.
I know, and she's probably like, why is my
is it?
phone not Central Zone time? It's Indiana, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's very frustrating because I was all discombobulated. Like, okay, is this?
What time is it really? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad I remember that because
There's some people out there asking questions about this.
Okay, I'm coming out.
Okay. So I'm gonna wrap.
Sorry.
I'm gonna go this way.